and welcome to Dad and Sons.
Yeah.
We're dads and sons, and which ones we are decisions that are to be made at your behest, our humble listener.
Only the gods decide.
Yeah.
Which means you decide. Ow, fuck. Sorry, I accidentally slapped my mic in the middle of pointing. Anyways, we're recording this podcast just actually a few days after the previous one from a late session last week. There hasn't been a whole lot that I have caught up with in that time. Well, let's see what I got into my Steam controller a bit, just grinding away more at Stardew, and I'm about to wrap up Mario. I don't know if you guys want to hop on to any of those, or if you got any video game stories you want to share.
Wait. Did you say Odyssey?
I was gonna say.
Oh yeah.
Tell us about your Odyssey.
I really need to hear what you have to say about Odyssey, George. I really need someone sensible
to hear it.
To tell me.
No one needs this. It's not a life or death situation. I'm sure.
Don't be what everyone wants. Be what everyone needs, George. Okay? Because
wait,
Odyssey.
Matt, have you played it?
Yeah, I finished it,
yeah.
I was just like, okay.
Wow,
really? Because
really?
I think I'm about to finish it, and my initial reaction was like, wait, did I really just unlock the final level? I'm pretty sure it is the final level. I feel like saying what it is might be kind of a spoiler, but usually Mario games tend to wrap up at the point I think I'm at, and it came faster than I think it felt like. Because I did end up taking my sweet time. I replayed through a lot of the levels. I hung out with the lady friend and played the 2-player mode, and we just swept through some stuff earlier in the game and really took our time with it. But it still feels like a little less ground was covered than I'm used to. And I think that's not necessarily because the game was any shorter than the previous Marios. I think it's just because the main story is so darn easy, usually, at least. The main pathway to whatever checkpoint progresses the story is definitely the easiest.
It's because you're missing the game. Most of the game is grinding out these damn little freaking things, these little moons.
I was gonna say that's
moons,
super weird because
yeah.
I feel like it's like the longest Mario game. Because once you get sucked into a level trying to find the moons, you get stuck there for like 3-4 hours in each level. Well, that's what I did.
Yeah.
Anyway.
And I think that's actually what's happening to me. The thing is that the way like the pacing is just it's bifurcated in a way that kind of makes every experience that I've had with it feel a little
well, the kind of
no
pacing.
Yeah, I don't want to say disposable. It made things move along. It seemed a lot faster paced, I guess, in terms of distributing the challenges. So there will be like optional moons that I really like. Like a lot of the stuff in New Donk City is just fun to explore. The optional challenges inside of the little open doors in that level are some really, really great platforming challenges, some really creative, like fun gag little joke levels. And then there's just like the Snow Kingdom. The stuff you do to get to the Snow Kingdom is run into the middle of a big room and complete a very, very simple boss fight that just has you stepping on the easiest things in front of you. And yeah, actually, that's what the level I was going through last night. There is a kingdom that Bowser has towards the end of the game that is, it feels like an Alice Madness Return levels, where all of the pieces are floating around in a void, and unlike the optional levels in the previous kingdoms, this is the style of the main level is the pieces floating around in the void rather than a coherent like world connected to a skybox that makes sense.
Yeah, but the design of that world and its aesthetic is so pleasing.
The individual pieces are like super good. Like individual HD era Nintendo assets are top ass quality stuff. I guess what I mean to say is that the main path that you got to do to complete your main story in this Mario game, like the thing they lay out for the like 5-year-olds to be able to complete is so almost a little bit boring easy. The stuff off the path is fine. And like Matt was saying, it's really dense.
It's like it was made for kids almost.
Oh, of course it was. I mean, it's Mario.
Yeah,
every Mario.
But it felt more kiddie
like
than usual. Except you have to really find those challenging areas to search for those moons. Yeah, there's some really challenging stuff, which those I had fun with. And I'm not saying I don't like Odyssey. That's not what I'm saying. I just don't think it's the best Mario at all. I think some of the magic
review scores unfortunately do.
Yeah, I think some of it is
the game
like
not
missing.
being like fair. It makes you go into it being like, oh, okay, well, everyone's reviewing this with the perfect score. It's time to pull the pants up and be. You're like seeing if it stacks up rather than seeing if it's just good by itself.
Well, see, it's weird because the way I feel about it is that it definitely, well, it's a Mario game first off, so it has to appeal to a younger audience in some sense, like all Mario games have. But the one thing I really like about Odyssey is, like, as you were saying, Matt, the challenging stuff is there if you find it, and that it's almost built around how good you get at the mechanics of the game. Because in Mario Odyssey, you have, Cappy, and you have all these kind of new jumps and all these weird kind of strange platforming things that you can do in Odyssey, that the better you get controlling Mario and like throwing your cap out and bouncing around and like jumping off stuff, the more challenging stuff you find. So it's like on the surface level, if you just do like the standard jumps and you just float around and you don't really explore too much like a kid kind of would, yeah, you're going to have an easy time doing the story and stuff like that. But once you start like experimenting with the mechanics like of the game, you end up finding the challenging stuff. It's not purposely put in the player's face to be like, oh, here is your optional challenging stuff if you're finding it boring. It's more like you seek it out by experimenting with these brand new game mechanics, and that's kind of what I like about Odyssey.
Yeah, there's no permanent ability unlocks. Like you got your whole moveset from the start, and that's real special these days.
I think it would have benefited of cutting a lot of the fat out of these moons, just cutting like half of them out that are just completely useless.
There's a lot they just hand to you.
It's completely useless. There's no benefit to those. It's
I
just
still
there.
like it better than the Zelda system though, where your progression unlockable is behind loading screens in separate maps from the main world. That really, I mean, I know I was playing through it for a review, but I have talked to players who were also driven nuts by mashing through those screens for every single orb in Zelda. And also, I guess, like the way I frame it in my mind, the collectathon grinding out in Zelda seems a little more out of place for that genre than this one here. I've noticed that the sessions in Mario that I'm having the most fun with are the ones where I'm not completing the story. It's the ones where I'm coming back the day later. Going back over old areas and seeing the fun moons that I missed, because there's a lot of fun moons. There's a lot of trash moons. I just really wish that the main story moons, I wish Nintendo had a little more faith in the difficulty curve they're putting the kids through when going through the main story, because it's real patronizing. And it feels a little wasted because the main story routes look gorgeous in this game. The main level hubs, when you're doing your point A to B through Bowser's Kingdom, sends you past absolutely gorgeous vistas and routes. But when you do the optional stuff, that's when level pieces start getting prefab snapped together in cloudless voids that are featureless, that don't incorporate the more challenging challenges that are in this game into the level in a more graceful way. And I feel like that's what's kind of been missed by them choosing the main story to be so easy.
Hey, let me nitpick just for one moment. All right, people, I'm pretty sure people already hate me at this point for talking trash, but couldn't they change the cutscene for them flying through the air every single time?
Oh, Oh yeah. There's a lot
and
of
then
the
you have to wait
mashing
for the
you gotta do when
loading.
you
Like
change
it
levels.
drove me nuts.
I think you can skip that cutscene and skip through the text, though. I mean, you still gotta mash for like a good few seconds. But
Yeah.
I
Like,
think
considering
there's ways
how-
to make it faster.
It's like the
than,
Zelda thing,
like
where you had to mash
it's
through
still
the temples.
faster than Zelda, though. I'm actually pretty cool with this game. I don't have any real complaints besides the
I feel like considering
weird
how
notes about
often-
difficulty like that.
I feel like considering you don't often switch between the levels, like you tend to spend quite a good amount of time in one level, it doesn't get that annoying for me. And it was nice to see, like, every time it happened, like the new stickers and stuff that you'd add to the side of it. It was nice to see that.
I
But
can
But
imagine
the
if I
whole
was
Mario
reviewing it, it would
surprised
drive me
expression
nuts.
every
though.
time he went past was kind of dumb.
Yeah, the thing is, like, when something would have happened, like, he just fought a Dark Souls boss, like, the face expression is the same. Everything is the same. It's the same cutscene over and over again. Nothing changes. And I just feel like for game like
you got
this,
more stickers on the back of your bumper.
it's so, I don't know. It just felt kind of lazy to me. It felt kind of lazy. I don't even know where the dragon came from, but you know.
It was a cool ass dragon. I was like giggling my little booty off, and I think that's like what's important is that the game's sense of humor and style seems like really mature and highly developed. Like it feels like 30 years of this weird abstract brand knowing how weird and abstract it is have finally come into its own and made something that feels like, I don't know, Pixar quality charm and humanity is behind this thing. But a lot of aspects to its presentation have been chiseled away into something more soulless, like that cutscene that hypes up what a grand magical adventure you're going on every time you go to a new kingdom. But it's the same cutscene, yeah, and it kind of
and the same
kills
route.
a little bit of the thrill, doesn't it?
Yeah, the same route too. It's linear. It's like, oh, okay, I'm gonna choose this one, and then I'm gonna choose the other one is gonna happen. I'm going to choose this lane, and then the other ones, I'm going to go to that one right after. Like, nothing changes. It's the same thing over and over again.
You're going to end up at the same checkpoint if you take multiple routes? They all kind of spiral up to the tip of the same mountains.
Oh, no. I mean, when you're picking stages. Like, there's no, spontaneous, like something happening. It's just the same thing. Over and over again, like
make you crash land at like a intermission kingdom on the way to the real deal.
Yeah, it didn't make me like excited to like, oh yeah, I know what's coming next. Like I was just like, come on, like where's the wonder?
I thought it was fine with that. Like, remember, I don't know, I kept getting real hyped to go to New Donk City, and because that's in the marketing, it's in the back of the
absolutely.
box, and the game keeps teasing you. It keeps like pulling it out a bit.
Yeah, it's a good few hours before you go there.
And there's I think 2 different times where you click on a menu where you say, yes, I'm ready, please, to go to New Donk City, but something happens and your jalopy gets slapped out of the sky and rerouted.
And that's the point.
I thought that was hilarious.
That's the point. Like, you're excited to go there, right? And then you're just...
Yeah, but the game's being a cute little tease about it.
It could have teased the other ones too, but okay. Yeah,
it's weird because I haven't really played it since before the new year, and when Odyssey came out last year, I was having a pretty rough time in my life, and it was weird because Odyssey was like my only solace at that time. Like everything was pretty going terrible at the time. And playing it was just such a joy, like aesthetically and, just hopping around as Mario. So I think I have like some sort of weird fondness for it beyond it just being a good Nintendo game anyway. So it's hard for me to nitpick.
I also think you're right. Point. Yeah, it is really fun to just bop Mario around. Like
I'll be that guy. I'll be that guy.
Came up with is...
If I won't delve into it for spoilers, but the festival in New Donk City, I had tears in my eyes, man. I had tears in my eyes.
Ooh.
Yeah, there were actually, I think, 2 moments that got me to tear, and it was that festival and hearing the music in the Cascade Kingdom the first time. The game has like a phenomenal sense of music and score, but there are still places, like I feel in the Bowser Kingdom, where you can tell some levels had to work on more of a budget than others. Like,
the sense of scope for that game is pretty big, especially considering
for how small the levels are. It's really surprising too. Like, there's stuff cramped vertically instead of horizontally, and that's something I'm not used to seeing either. Like, yeah, you remember zooming the map out in New Donk City and being like, oh wow, we're just like, these are 2 city blocks here, but there's 50 something moons I gotta gather, and I don't gotta gather them. You know, I think the reason why I don't like my the reason why I have less fun, at least going through the levels the first time, is because those are the runs where I'm raking up the giveaway filler moons on the way to whatever spiral top of the mountain they set you up with. I'm spotting a little piece of glowing sand off to the right. I go butt bounce on it, get a moon. There's 15 seconds of fanfare interrupting me on the way to the top. Whereas when I go back and replay the level again, I'm deliberately searching out the more hidden stuff that usually ends up being more fun to get the moon around. It's that first time through on your way through the story, where I was both noticing that the platforming challenges themselves were really easy, and that I was vacuuming up a lot of carpet dust moons lying around the carpet that were not really much of a challenge to get. And I guess, like, I think that's my big problem with it. Like, if that main story path was also a little more difficult, it might feel shorter, even though this is not shorter. And like Liam was saying, I bet it actually does clock in as one of the longest Mario.
I think before I was done with it was about 35 hours I'd spent on it, and that is definitely the longest I think I've spent on a Mario game without replaying.
Yeah, and I feel like the reason why it feels shorter is because whenever I stopped doing the optionals and sat down for the main quest, I was breezing through it, doing everything easily on the first try.
Well, you're kind of getting like moon after moon. Like, it's really snappy with the way you get like one moon and then you see another, and you get that moon as well, and you're always getting that diddle-a-dit sort of like jingle for getting the moon.
And
so it does
like
feel like
Zelda,
you're going through it.
It makes time fly.
Yeah,
it makes a lot more time pass in real life than it feels like has passed in the video game.
I guess I don't know, that's different for me. Like you said, like the breadcrumbs of moons. I'm more like the Super Mario 64 type guy, where I'm gonna get this star, I have to do this thing in this sandbox. Like I rather that instead.
Yep, I
100%
would rather too.
I can see why you'd say that.
Not even
like
a little
vacuuming
bit.
up the filler ones.
Yeah.
But I totally like the ones that are at the top of a spiral mountain full of wacky stuff you got to jump over on the way up.
There is definitely the shoved in location on the map, easy to get to moons. But there are some really, truly difficult moons to get that hark back to that kind of thing. And I also think if you did get a moon and you got kicked out of the level, like you did in Mario 64, that would just be awful. That would be really bad.
Yeah, no, Banjo-Kazooie figured this out a year after Mario.
So
don't
maybe
kick
cutting
players out after they get their goal.
Cutting out on the filler moons, the ones that are just locations on the map that are easy to get, and having the ones that need your sort of care and attention would be great. But don't change the whole staying within the level kind of thing, obviously, because it would just get so
well,
bad.
Yeah. I mean, especially if they toned it down to like a few moons, they could definitely do that. It didn't have to be like a ton of moons.
What would be the point? You'd be going back to the Odyssey anyway, so what would be the point?
No. You don't have to go back to the Odyssey.
Player's time.
You don't have to go back to the Odyssey. I'm saying if they cut down the moons, it would be like 64, where you have a bunch of moons that actually have some gameplay to them. And then, Like, oh, how do I get that moon that's in the middle of that sand pit? I don't know. I got to figure it out. Like,
I wonder if they tested this internally and found out that having these easy moons lying around creates that like 30-minute Skinner box loop of like, oh, da 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 da, you got a reward. Oh, da 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 da, you got a reward.
Piece of candy.
Oh, da 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 da, you got a reward. If like that constant repetition of shallow bells and whistles congratulating the player for getting to a slightly different location than the one they were in a few seconds ago, it actually ends up fueling the quote unquote fun, the fun math. the Nintendo Switch Entertainment System fun math.
Mm-hmm. I thought by like going, I finished it and I went back, started completing some of the moons, and I started to realize it was more of what I didn't like, and I was like, I wonder if I just don't like collectathons anymore. But then
I can easily imagine the law of diminishing returns hitting at this case. Like, it hit me before Zelda, and I'm actually handling this one way better than Zelda. Bopping Mario around a big map to collect things feels a lot more fast and responsive and fluid and fun and bouncy than bopping Link around walls where I was just kind of holding the up button in one direction while the stamina meter depletes.
But I liked Hat in Time. And Hat in Time is it's what I wanted from Mario. Where it
very
changes
different
the
concept
gameplay.
For the same concept. They're both like hat-themed polygonal platformers about 90s nostalgia.
And the dive, too. The dive. And I was like, wait a minute. Is this Mario? Like, what is this?
They
well, obviously,
have
that was
some
in
of
64.
the same moves, too.
Yeah.
And
weird.
also, is it just me, or for some of those moves, is Hat Girl actually, like, a little sharper to control?
Yeah.
Like, there's a few moments in Mario where the camera is definitely not doing me favors, and I don't think I've had any moments like that in Hat in Time. I've definitely noticed weird animation quality issues that are not there with Mario, but the camera actually seems to keep Hat Girl in focus, unobtrusive, with like more natural feeling sensitivity and movement to it than frickin' Mario's camera.
Yeah, the only thing with the camera with Hat in Time, I feel like I can't move it in directions I want to move it in certain areas. It seems like it's trying to hide stuff.
They want you focused.
Yeah.
Yep. I think that's the idea too, is harkening back to those challenges of the pre-built camera placement where they'll hide something you got to get in some piece of cluttered scenery. Anyways, you going through it? Are you going through it?
Yeah.
That was one
I'm
of my
finishing
favorite
that game.
games last year that no one played.
Yeah. I'm finishing that game. I played 2 games, Iconoclasts and Hat in Time. I finished Iconoclasts, and Hat in Time I haven't finished. I went through. I'm at chapter 3 right now, and every single chapter is different. Every single chapter is different.
If it's Iconoclasts or Iconoclasts, but yeah. Anyways,
whatever how you ever say it.
I got 3 levels into Hat in Time, and I do plan on picking it up and finishing it off, especially after the DLC releases. But anyways, what do you think?
So in the beginning, I was like, oh, this is kind of a collectathon, but I'm kind of okay with this one because you can get these badges that actually improve your character, and I was like, okay, I'll be fine collecting these. And it had like this, you're in Mafia Town, and the Mafia guys always have like some cute thing to say. I was like, okay, this held me over at least through this stage, and then all of a sudden it completely changes. It's not Mafia Town anymore. It's some other planet where it's a movie stage, and I don't want to spoil it because there's a lot of cool stuff. And I was sending pictures through the Discord about the crows and stuff like that, and how you can tell them what to say.
You remember that insurance bill too, right?
Yeah, it's It is charming. I thought the look of the game, because I feel like I'm playing little people all the time now with these indie games. Like it's always some little boy or some little girl. It's just like, I don't want to play a little boy and little girl
video
kitty
games.
Yeah, and this game won me over big time. It's good. I like it. I like it a lot, and it's one of those games where when I was thinking about, I thought about Odyssey when I was playing this quite a lot, because obviously the hats and being able to dive, having that motion, it is a lot faster than running. The gameplay constantly changes. That's kind of my breadcrumb for me. I like being able to be like, okay, I'm using the same mechanics, but in a different way on this different stage, like, and the story changes, the just how you use the character and what you're doing. I guess I can't do spoilers because the different stages actually have some really cool stuff. I guess one of the ones that I really, really liked is was the Crow one, where you're investigating a murder and all of a sudden they start doing the stuff that you've said to the crows. They start making fun of the stuff you say to the crows, and they start doing I guess intruder cones. Like MGS1.
Oh yeah. There's like light stealth mechanics involved all of a sudden.
Yeah,
it is like really the opposite layout of Mario. Like every single piece that you have to collect is a big deal story-wise. The level is a collection of set pieces that contextualize how big of a deal whatever piece you need to collect is, because they'll be an item that's fought over by the characters in the level, and they will create cool video game specific gags out of it. Like you'll crash onto a movie set and all of a sudden a bill will show up in the corner of the screen tracking the property damage you're causing.
Yes.
So that they can like chase after you on the way out and like make you remember the things you're doing as a video game character. And they're like cute and clever gimmicks that don't necessarily hearken or call back on hardcore platforming in the way Mario does, but the optionals in Hat in Time are like really freaking good levels that are super hard platforming challenges that have your pieces floating around in the void. Like it really is what I feel a lot of people who might want more Banjo-Kazooie in this year's Mario to be would end up being, and that's why it's so great. There's something both for everyone. Like Mario is a little more sandboxy and pure and technical, and Hat in Time is not, but it is when it needs to be.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a janky version of the best of both worlds, and Mario is a highly polished version of one of those worlds.
I really want to play A Hat in Time. I have no idea when I'll find the time to play it, but did the sort of art style put you off a little bit? Because when I look at it, I'm kind of like, this always looks half unfinished.
Yeah.
First impressions was kind of rough.
Is it really that bad when you play it? Because when I watch videos of it, I'm like, there's no shadows.
Kinda.
I think it looks way better in motion than in screenshots.
Yeah, it's one of those games. It's good enough that you forget about it, and it doesn't really matter. Some of the characters too, like they look funky, but like the voice acting kind of gets rid of that. Like when you go to the spooky town and you see the spooky man, and he just pops up, and it's great. The delivery is so good that you're kind of wrapped up into this wacky, very video gamey story, and you forget about it. You forget that some of the graphics is clipping into each other and stuff like that.
Also, a bit of context to keep in mind is when going through it that ends up making a a lot of that more excusable in a way to put it is that you can tell the team learning art as they made this game. Like Hat in Time was a project totally caught in development hell for like half a decade by a new studio that hadn't exactly had professional slick quality skills when they started out, but by the time they finally launched this thing, like 1.5 presidents later, you can tell they learned a lot about how to polish up the art style and animations. And there's a character in the game, the Mask Salesman, who I think is like a parody of how bad their old animations used to be. And sometimes you'll see characters in the background who will just like barely fold their limbs in and out of almost not a T pose as their like waist stretches in a way that looks really robotic and unnatural, standing next to characters with way better animations. And that happens to art style as well. Like in the very beginning of the game, was it just me, Matt, or did Mafia Town have a really weird sense of humor that didn't seem to jive with the game's flow? Like it does in the movie studio level. When everything just seems to come into its own.
It definitely changes after you leave the Mafia Town. Everyone's making these like weird, I don't know, dad jokes. I don't know. It's just corny. It's really corny.
It's my kind of game.
Yeah, it's very corny, man. It won me over with it though. I'm okay.
The style of the Subcon forest, like if you Google that and type in the image, if you Google image search that and like look at concept art for it, it naturally fits her anatomy in her style. But if you Google image search like Mafia Town, Hat in Time, then you see like these weird discoloration, like weird low poly, like sharp angles that don't really seem to fit the style like the later levels do. Like they even get better at their own art style as the game goes on. And that's it definitely makes the art weird to look at first, but that makes it more endearing as it goes on, especially since, like I was saying, like animation quality and like polish are good enough for it to look better in motion than it does in screenshots.
Yeah, I don't like the character. The way it's supposed to look is great, the character design. But when you look at her, she looks weird. She looks freaking weird. And some of the characters look weird as hell. No, it looks weird. Like when you're looking at the character in game and not from like some cutscene or whatever, it looks weird, man.
You know, one thing I have always kind of been weirded out is the conductor. That's the guy's name, right?
Yeah.
He's just kind of like a abstract chomping set of teeth wearing a hat. And that's how you know it's a humanoid character with a mouth.
Oh, man. There's a lot of things that you just don't care about after a while. It's just like, oh, okay. Yeah, I mean, graphics are important, but sometimes when the game is good, the game is good.
I don't really care about graphics too much, but I definitely care about aesthetics. And for as much as I do want to play it, I don't know, it's just something about Hat in Time's aesthetics so far don't quite sit right with me yet.
You should give it a shot. Someday it'll be really cheap,
I do want
and it'll still be good.
I do want
Chug it down like a protein shake, man.
It's like a smaller, more polished, more made with heart Mario Odyssey.
But speaking of good aesthetics, though, not to change the subject too quickly.
Yes.
What
aesthetics are good lately?
I spent all weekend playing Dragon Ball FighterZ.
An experience known for its good aesthetics.
Oh my. Yes, very much so. So Friday was a pretty
we got
damn
at least
big
one
game.
comment that was like, George, we need a screenshot showing how crazy this thing you guys are talking about looks. That's
the one with the giant fist.
The giant fist, where just for like 2 frames of the special attack, they make Vegeta's fist disproportionately giant, is the coolest freaking thing in the world to me.
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. So Friday was a pretty big day for the Japanese video game industry and, good games in general with Monster Hunter. and Dragon Ball FighterZ coming out. And I was going to say, would it be terribly unprofessional of me to just play Monster Hunter while doing this podcast, or just let you two talk about hand time for 2 hours while I play Monster Hunter, because that is damn good as well.
Oh no, it's happening. It's all over again. Jimmy is grinding out Rathalos scales on the podcast.
No.
The thing is, it was sold out. It was sold out over the weekend. I managed to get Dragon Ball FighterZ, but I downloaded that, and I wanted to get a physical copy of Monster Hunter. I wanted to trade some games in for it, and it was sold out everywhere. Like, the hype in Japan was like on another level. Like, every billboard, TV advert
did really well this
everything.
Weekend.
Well, yeah, we can get onto that as well.
For PC.
But it sold like 5 million copies in 3 days, which is madness.
Yeah, I'm waiting for PC, but I'm still really happy it's doing well. I'm a little jealous.
I'm sorry, Matt. I do want to inform you that it's pretty damn good.
PC, I don't want.
No, that's good news to me, because that just means the PC version will be better.
Wow.
As good as you say Capcom. This game is, I won't feel jealous, because I know the version I'm waiting for will be better than whatever the high bar is at right now.
It's funny you say that, because I did hear
FPS.
I heard a lot of things people were saying about the PlayStation 4 version, not the PS4 Pro version. Like, people say the Pro version is pretty good. Like, the game is specifically getting the most out of the PlayStation Pro. But I heard a lot of things like there's drop frame rates and a lot of pop-in textures and stuff like that on the like normal PlayStation 4. I haven't really seen too much of that. Granted, I've only played about 6 hours so far, because I only managed to get a copy yesterday because it was completely sold out over the weekend.
Yeah. From what I played of the beta, it seemed like really sharply optimized. Like,
I haven't really seen anything.
Laid
and
out
the fact is, you have
without any obvious drops.
You have in these areas, you have these giant monsters just roaming around that just appear out of nowhere in this map that is completely loaded in from when you go from the camp to, the world, and there is no loading screens anymore, so you can just roam around the map freely. And you just have these monsters that move around the map all the time. I was doing a quest before we started the podcast, and there was like 3 giant monsters just roaming around the map, constantly moving. And I would just like walk into an area, and all of a sudden there would be this giant T-Rex fucker like right in front of my face, screaming at me. And just the amount of stuff they're pushing into the world. There's all these like fauna and all these smaller animals that you can capture now. It's like giving that team who were pushing the 3DS hardware to its absolute limit and getting incredible animations out and incredible small little worlds that you could play, and getting them on the PlayStation 4 hardware and allowing them to have almost unlimited power to create something has been a good idea, it seems.
I'm really surprised that the game is as much of a tech demo as it is.
I wouldn't say it's a tech demo, because, loading screens, there's still like... I remember, like, one loading screen was like 2 minutes long.
Wait, really?
Yeah, there are some cut corners around.
I don't know. Maybe you're sacrificing those loading times for how good the game looks. You
definitely are. Like, 2 minutes for a whole 50-minute quest where I don't have any loading screens between areas. I'm down for that. But 2 minutes is a pretty long time for a loading screen these days.
Yeah, that's like unheard of. That's like PlayStation 1, the disc raring up, like spinning up the lawnmower engine for your Tony Hawk's Pro Skater level.
And one thing that is notable is when you accept a quest, you have to wait for the quest to load before you can depart. So it kind of tries to disguise this as you getting prepared for the quest. So like going to eat or buying potions and stuff from like the rations and all that kind of stuff. But actually it's the quest loading in.
TBH, that sounds like the kind of stuff I don't like about Monster Hunter, like the artificiality.
I mean, it's like it's a minute at max, and you can walk around in the hub world, and it reminds you to go eat at the canteen, which is always a good idea. If you forget, you can eat at the camp in the world anyway. But then you load the quest in, and then you have to, when you depart, you have to wait like a minute to 2 minutes for the whole world to load in then.
Oh, you got to get that SSD in there, man.
Yeah, some people have said they have. I don't have a PlayStation Pro either, so I'm just running on the PS4. But as I said,
it's okay to go to the bathroom.
Well, I guess so.
Do they know it's
you
2
can definitely
minutes
go to the
long? Is
bathroom
that
in
really
that time.
normal?
Depends on what type of bathroom you're going to go in.
Yeah, you don't want the poop particles following you out.
But, as I said, compared to the 3DS version, having 2 minutes of loading in for 50 minutes of a quest where you can freely roam around the map without loading screens, I'm fine. I'm fine with that. It's totally fine. And what's even more surprising is
do you know if you can turn the
game is only
off?
15 gigabytes.
Wow.
Which, considering everything that is in that game, is pretty impressive.
They did it.
Games are huge these days.
They made
and
a good
even
game.
more so, Dragon Ball FighterZ was 4 gigabytes.
Wow.
I have no idea how they did that. That's pretty incredible. But yeah, it's been a pretty good weekend for Japanese games, and I spent all weekend playing versus Dragon Ball FighterZ with a friend of mine, and that game is very good. Very, very good.
How good? Is it easy mode? Like, are people spamming the same combos over and over again, and there's no way to stop them? Like, I need to know these things before I dive in.
Okay, so the closest game I can compare it to is Marvel vs. Capcom, really. Especially Marvel vs. Capcom 2, probably.
Okay, because if you said 3, I would be like, no, I'm not getting it.
But you see, I love 3, so I'm okay with that. But it's definitely more like 2. It's more like 2. But
Infinity
the thing is, it adds in all of the quirky stuff that you got from games like Guilty Gear and BlazBlue. Like, it has a kind of like a burst called sparking mode where you can press both the R1 and R2 button, and you gain like speed and attack, but also you can burst out of a combo, or you can push the opponent away from you. So it has that kind of Guilty Gear. I can't remember what they call it in BlazBlue and Guilty Gear, but it basically allows you to break away from the opponent. So if you're kind of on your last character, you can use that to get some distance and stuff like that. You constantly build meter really fast in Dragon Ball, and like Marvel, it's all about just comboing and ending on a super, like a level 1 super or a level 3 super. So you're constantly seeing supers, you're constantly seeing the damage of supers. The game moves at an incredible pace, so even though it sounds kind of tedious to be watching supers kind of at the end of every single combo, the way it all sort of flows into the gameplay, it's both incredibly stylish and flashy, making the game appealing for anyone watching, but it also kind of makes you feel good as a player. Like, it feels like you're doing a lot of damage to your opponent, whereas, maybe your combo is like 76 hits long, and now by the time you do a super, the percentage of damage you're doing is very minimal.
How much raw time do you think that is total of these moments where you're just like watching your character get smacked?
I don't know.
How long
it depends. Like a battle is like the time limit for a battle is 300 seconds, which for a fighting game is quite long. But you have 3 characters, and I've never had a timeout in this game. You deal damage quite quickly. Like, you can take off half of one character's life in one combo. But every character has recoverable health. So if you get comboed and half your health goes missing, you can switch out that character to bring in another one, and that character will slowly regain some of its health.
So you got some mileage.
So it's kind of so it's a battle of switching and assisting, like any versus fighter, really. But the one thing I think that's quite special about Dragon Ball FighterZ specifically is coming in. Like, fighting games I think have struggled for a long time with being accessible. I think anyone who would argue against that is kind of doesn't understand what makes fighting games so special themselves, which is like combos and stuff like that. And you have games like Marvel vs. Capcom, or even BlazBlue and Guilty Gear, where they have, on a surface level, very simplistic inputs, like light, medium, heavy does a combo. like the standard sort of DHC combo. Compared to Street Fighter, where it's a little more mechanical and a little more strategic, Dragon Ball FighterZ has this weirdly unique depth where from the beginning, if you go into the combo systems, it basically just tells you to press square or triangle like 5 times in a row, and you'll do like a super flashy damaging combo. And you kind of like, that kind of feels weird. But for someone who's not good at fighting games, it gives them an opportunity to do damage. But what you can do is you can press square a few times, and then you can jump cancel out of it, and then it'll like reset, and you can do additional moves. So if you're good at fighting games or you have sort of experience with them, you can play around with like jump canceling and super canceling out of combos and mixing in the assists to create sort of really complex and damaging combos that give it that traditional fighting game complexity that people look for. So it doesn't hinder. It doesn't hinder
requiring
bad players.
Less technical button presses to make the cool happen.
Yeah, so you don't need to. You can't play against someone who's good at Street Fighter if you can't do Shoryuken movements or Hadouken movements, and you know, sort of FADCs and stuff like that. Yeah. You're kind of not that good. Whereas in Dragon Ball FighterZ, you can play against someone who's never played before, and you can tell them, okay, if you press square 5 times, you'll do a super combo. If you press triangle 4 times, you'll do another super combo. If you add in like a circle, you'll do like a heavier hit of all your other attacks. So, and what's even better is although the characters are very different, even when you have like 4 different Gokus, 3 different Vegetas, each character has a universal control system. So everyone has a Hadouken motion, and to do the level 1 super, it's the Hadouken motion and R1. It doesn't matter what character you're playing, the motion is the same. So all the characters control the same, but what you can do with their combos and the frame data, essentially, basically they're all different moves, is you can play around with them then, knowing what the controls are going to be. You don't have to basically bring up the moves list all the time to be remembering what to do.
Do you think that's
like, you know that every character has a level 1 super if you Hadouken an R1. Every character has a level 3 if you do a Hadouken and R2. It's really simple like that.
I'm just wondering though if you think this is going to have lasting appeal to it. It almost sounds like what you're describing is a little normal.
No, because if you watch anyone,
freeform it is.
It seems like the fighting game community have really, really accepted it so far. And I think the Steam numbers it had like 40,000 concurrent players, which I think Tekken had the second biggest, which was like 17,000.
Yeah, that's really good for fighting game numbers.
Yeah. So, and if you watch any of the videos of sort of better people who play like Maximilian or stuff like that, they are having fun with just trying to see how much damage they can do in combos and how to sort of merge the synergy of the assists, because every character has a unique assist, and combining those assists together with the combos that other characters can do brings up some really unique things to watch, but also to do. And it has like a weird depth to it, even though it has this complete simplicity on a surface level.
So far, you've only been playing it a few days, but how do you feel? What's your impression?
I really like it. I really like it, and
great.
I'm looking forward
thumbs up
to seeing better people play it, like, to see what kind of crazy stuff they can come up with. I was watching a combo someone was doing with Tien before that did like 9,000 damage, and it was the craziest, flashiest shit I'd ever seen. And part of what lends to the game being as good as it is just how good it looks. So, you have these kind of long combos. They're not like Marvel combos where if you get touched, you're dead. It's not like that. The damage scales quite quickly, so you can do half, maybe 3/4 if you really push it. But the other player always has a chance to recover or, assist out. And there are lots of ways to bring in your other characters, like canceling combos and stuff like that. So what lends to it is you can watch other games and they have like cool, flashy combos. But in Dragon Ball FighterZ, the combos and the way that game looks just lend to how awesome the combos feel. And they look incredibly flashy. So it drives you to want to experiment with them more.
That sounds like something I want to get into. I also am gonna want to be getting into Iconoclasts later this year too. Which, Matt, have you started that up?
Oh, I'm done. I played it and I couldn't put it down.
Yeah,
I wouldn't say it's like, oh my god, enthralling, but like
pixel art looks real good.
It's so sexy. 8 years in the making from Konjac.
From a guy
so happy
who does really good pixel art.
Get it out.
Yeah,
these games
and
keep happening.
And it's better than Owlboy.
I was about to say, like, last year Owlboy came out with the 8-year pixel art budget. Like, these games with decade-long pixel art work requirements keep happening, and it's fun.
Yeah, I think you enjoy it. Like, the only thing that you will probably have an opinion on is the story, because I say the gameplay is actually pretty...
Those.
Huh?
I tend to have opinion about stories.
Yeah. Like the story is interesting. Yeah, the story is interesting. It's like it is like Robin. Your main character lives in a world where all jobs are picked for you by like the government. Well, it's not really a government. It's kind of like religion, I would say. Obviously,
like
because of the name,
the chip you get.
Yeah.
Futurama.
Yeah, and if you don't pick the job, if you don't like the job or you don't do the job, you kind of get wrecked. I won't spoil it for you, but
you don't want to be the butt professional. Too bad.
No, you gotta get in there. You gotta see them hemorrhoids. Mm-hmm. Yeah,
so
but
in a world where like one lady has to get everyone their job back.
Mm-hmm.
I can see
Right.
how notes about the story might be kind of weird.
Yeah, it's. I would say it discusses a lot about what people believe in. Obviously, you can hear from the title. Yeah, like,
quote.
Yeah, it's one of those stories. So everyone's take on it is going to be different. I would say, aside from that, there were the characters are great, and they give you like a healthy dose of that in between gameplay, that it keeps you wanting to see what happens next. Like they really pace it properly.
The story was also a huge weak point of Owlboy as well. I remember it being a little like too sappy and too earnest for its own good, and like a good dose of humor and self-awareness is what it was missing. And I don't know, your description of this post-apocalyptic terrible world being one in which jobs are assigned doesn't exactly sound like a compelling problem to be solving for this world here.
Well, they get wrecked if you don't follow the rules. Like, you get wrecked.
I guess I don't know the details.
You'll see when you play. You'll see when you play. Like, Owlboy, I lost interest like within the 2 hours. I was just like, I didn't finish it, because I was just like, okay, I can't take this. Like, oh, the bullies,
they cried really hard in Owlboy.
Yeah, it was too much for me. It was way too much. I can understand people liking that type of thing, but too much.
What I think is even more impressive about Iconoclasts is the fact that I've heard a lot of people praise the story. I'm not that far into the game at all. I'm trying to play it as well. But Cognac's English isn't his first language. And he wrote that game himself. Like, everyone's praising like the characters and the dialogue in English. And he English isn't even, he speaks English, but
so was it
English
written in
isn't
There's some
even his
typos in
language.
there. There's some typos.
Yeah, there is.
Yeah.
But English is his first language, and that's kind of crazy. I found that really impressive.
Yeah. Is it made by one guy? Can't be, right?
Yeah. No, it's just Konyak. A couple of mine and George's friends from Dangan, Nyan, and those guys, they published it here in Japan, but they did nothing to do with the development.
What? He didn't have like a guy do like the pixel art or something like that, or the music?
No, he did it. He did
That's why
everything.
it takes so long.
What? That is...
He showed a screenshot. He showed a screenshot of the game from 2007.
Yeah, I saw it.
And it's like, can you imagine?
It looks like garbage.
I can't even remember what I was doing in 2007, let alone characters and worlds I'd created that then I was looking at for 10 years before it got released. Like, I can't even imagine that.
I can see why it looks like Wafu Heaven right now. Yeah. Yeah, so a lot of cute little anime pixel girls in this
Matt's
game.
favorite.
And all the cutscenes in it as well, all the animations for the cutscenes, he did too.
So
yeah,
it's real fortunate that it's now when this stuff is coming out, that these like one-man, decade-long passion projects, because within the past couple years we've had Stardew and Owlboy and now Iconoclasts. I guess 10 years ago when X&A in the indie marketplace was originally beginning, there were at least like some people who were like, okay, no, this is my opportunity to make my magnum opus. I will take as long as it takes.
And I think I would say there's certain parts where I'm like, I don't agree with the way he did things with certain characters, like just me disagreeing with, the way he offed somebody or something like that. I was like, I don't know if that feels satisfying. But other than that, like this game is like polished, like super polished. I had run into no issues. The game feels good, other than wanting to wall bounce, because I feel like I need the wall bounce.
It looks like a game where you're gonna wall bounce, but you don't wall bounce.
You don't wall bounce, and I don't like the tweaks are kind of useless. Those are like two main things that pop up in my head. Like there's not really the upgrade system that I don't mind collecting, so I collected them anyway, but I never used them because I was waiting for some type of upgrade that was worth me spending it, and I end up just not spending all my resources. So that happened. I was hoping that there was something like really cool, like an upgrade for our gun or something like that. It's kind of like if you haven't played, it's a puzzle platformer with some like cave story gun vibes to it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely,
and you use your wrench.
Cave story vibe.
Cave story, and use your big oversized wrench to twist some nuts. Yeah, and with that comes a lot of different puzzles. I mean, a lot of different puzzles that don't repeat themselves. And this is the theme that I've gotten with A Hat in Time and Icono. They don't repeat garbage. I don't like repeating stuff. I like things to change. I feel it lazy. It's the reason why I don't really play a lot of AAA titles nowadays. Is because a lot of copy and paste.
Like in 2013 when that I think it was a Play 4 Real article that was titled Review: Ubisoft Game. And the guy was like, the story seems great, but it seems like it's lasting a little too long. The gameplay feels great, but it seems like things are repeating themselves too much. I feel like when that article dropped, like people finally had a voice for what was wrong with the current trends, and now things that break those trends are going to seem more exciting. Whew, I don't know. But I really got to go to the bathroom. So we're about to hit the hour mark where the break happens anyway. And
Icono is good. Play it.
Yeah, concluding thoughts. Play it. It's getting real good reviews. Everyone loves it.
It's really good. Pixar is phenomenal. Good.
Go enjoy it. Enjoy video games.
Hello? Somebody out there? E.T. Video game?
It's the video game that lets you pretend you're E.T., running away from secret agents, falling into danger, finding a phone to call home, and discovering the best thing on earth, a friend. E.T., only from Atari.
Hello. I didn't expect to see you there wearing that in this private area.
Are we in Matt's new apartment or something?
Yeah, with all of the things that we don't expect to see when introducing new people.
Right.
And their accessories.
Well, there is no accessories. I think that's not the problem.
Only your God-given accessories.
Birthday suit. I forgot to do a Netflix no chill. I'm just gonna go ahead and say watch Bright. No, don't watch that crap. Watch the gorgeous ladies of wrestling glow. Watch that. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's kind of rough to get inside, but once you get into it, the characters are cool. All right, there you go.
Yeah,
I'm done.
I mean, is this if this is a topic that you feel passionate about?
No. I just
free to elaborate.
I've gotten used to saying one every week, so I just thought I would slide that in there for the people who are watching,
who tune in for the Netflix and chill segment. Of course.
Yeah, of course. I'm pretty sure there's at least 5 people out there who are watching my recommendations.
Well, I mean, like, to be fair, I feel bad because your recommendations usually sound like stuff I'd be into. Like I want to watch like girls in costumes fight.
I think that tunes out.
I mean, I was a fan of the Soul Calibur games too.
Right. I haven't watched Godzilla yet. I should have. I would have recommended that. I'm pretty sure that's gonna be real good.
I finished Devilman Crybaby. Speaking of Netflix, I won't talk about that for too long, but
I watched a Danny O'Dwyer video.
People should watch that. That's good.
Devilman Crybaby.
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm surprised you don't know about it, Matt.
Yeah. I'm writing that down.
It's like Netflix is hot shit at the moment. Everyone on Twitter is
called Crybaby. What's that got to do with Devilman's?
One of the characters cries a lot.
Oh, so they're called a crybaby?
He doesn't cry that much.
Still gets no love.
The title's more of it's more of a Japanese kind of obnoxious play on the human heart and being emotional. That's what it's all about.
So it makes more sense in the original language, or at least I guess sounds cooler.
In Japan, it's also called
language.
that. So. In Japan, it's also called Devilman Crybaby. So, but it's good, and you should watch it. And it's only 10 episodes long. It's super sexual and super gory, but it's really good.
Speaking of non-numbered sequential high-budgeted spin-offs of an old beloved franchise.
Okay.
Monster Hunter World's doing super well.
I don't know if I'm okay with that segue there, man.
Well, Monster Hunter World is kind of sort of like, it doesn't have a number at the end of the sequel. The series has been going on forever. I mean, it's no Devilman, but they're not going to make like Devilman 30 at this point. Like, they're not going to make Monster Hunter 9, I guess. Once the numbers go past 6, they don't want to add numbers to things anymore, and these franchises go on forever.
For that game.
Is it the best? I mean, it makes people think it's an MMO. I've seen a lot of people make that misconception.
Why don't they just look things up? Why are people so
just
stupid?
Monster Hunter 7. Monster Hunter 7, it would have been fine. People still would have understand. I wonder if that would have affected sales, though. Because do you think Monster Hunter World would have been the successful over 5 million copies sold over this weekend game had it been numbered?
No.
So World is more appealing to normies than like numbers above 6. You think?
Yes, absolutely.
Japan loves putting obnoxious numbers on the end, but World though, like, it just gives it a bigger feeling. and the thing is, like, none of the Monster Hunters have really had numbers recently. We've had Double Cross, we had Generations. Yes, we had Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, but, it still had the Ultimate title. Like, numbers never really been a big thing in Monster Hunter. You had Monster Hunter Portable G, Monster Hunter, fucking
Yeah, I guess technically this would be Monster Hunter 5.
Yes, technically it would.
Even though like Wikipedia counts stuff like Generations as a full sequel, they don't have a number in there.
Yeah, no, this would be Monster Hunter 5. And I think at Capcom it was originally starting out life as Monster Hunter 5, and then they changed it to World. But it makes sense. It had a worldwide launch, which is a first for a Monster Hunter game. It features a world, very much so, like an open world. Although, take the quote open world with a pinch of salt. But I think it's a good clean title, and it did gangbusters here in Japan
and in UK, and I don't think we have US, but we know that the global total worldwide number is 5 million. That's the fastest selling
3 days.
That breaks records for the franchise, which itself is one of the biggest, most profitable franchises, particularly for the Japanese market. This is their poster boy, their money factory, making way more money than usual, which means they're probably real happy about the development of this.
Yeah, for people who don't know, a lot of people know this because it gets passed on through, Did You Know Gaming videos and stuff like that. But in Japan, there are kind of 2 cultural events around video games, and none of them have anything to do with Nintendo usually. One is, of course, Dragon Quest, which famously there is a story about they had to change the day of Dragon Quest release date from a Tuesday to a Saturday because people were taking work. So many people were taking the day off work or calling in sick to play Dragon Quest on its launches.
Was it a national crisis?
Supposedly. I don't know how true that story is, though.
Oh, okay.
But there was definitely things where they had to change the day because a lot of people were not going to work because they were playing Dragon Quest. And the other one is Monster Hunter. And Monster Hunter is like every boy in Japan who likes games has like a Monster Hunter pencil case. They talk about Monster Hunter all the time. Every like TV advert that has anything to do with games or PlayStation is Monster Hunter themed at the moment. They have like famous Japanese actors in the adverts, and it's like a cultural phenomenon over here. Like Monster Hunter is a big deal.
Yeah,
it's so weird, and like 5 million doesn't seem like a lot if you're saying record breaking, but in Japan, it's huge.
It's hard to tell from stateside, but Monster Hunter, because more games actually do come out in Japan in the Monster Hunter franchise than in the West. Like, to the point where they are yearly re-releases. They are very much Japan's Call of Duty. Like, this is the iterative yearly installment sequel milk franchise. I think
Monster Hunter World has been in development for a good long time, though. I think it was like 3 to 4 years.
And their cycle usually represents projects that don't have that high of a dev cycle.
Yeah, so we saw Double Cross, which was the next. They always sort of do like an ultimate version. Like we had Monster Hunter 4 in Japan, but we didn't get that version in the West. We got what was called Monster Hunter 4 Plus or 4. Which is Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate in the West, and we only got the upgraded version. And then you had Generations, which is Monster Hunter Cross here in Japan. So then they did an upgraded version, which was Monster Hunter Double Cross, which released for the Nintendo Switch. But we didn't get that in the West. So there is a Monster Hunter out there on the Nintendo Switch, but we don't have it in the West, and we probably won't get it because of Monster Hunter World.
So
I mean, I wouldn't see why you'd want to play it after playing Monster Hunter World anyway, even on the Switch, because Monster Hunter World is a far better game than Double Cross.
So meanwhile, while that has happened, I wouldn't be surprised if you guys missed this news. Final Fantasy 15 got a cell phone version.
Yeah, the Pocket Edition, right?
It looks real weird. All the characters look like Funko Pop figures.
That was announced last year, wasn't it?
Maybe. It totally passed me by. I was just like scrolling through this thing like wacky. Yeah.
I kind of looked at the art style and I was thinking, obviously you can't recreate the actual, in-game graphics. And it's such a weird project to be doing anyway, like retelling the game and having the same
and like
game
telltale
sort of
story cutscenes.
What?
Like occasionally there's some overhead click and dragging you do through action scenes where it looks like characters auto attack when they're in a certain radius for a melee, but it looks like a lot of it is a Telltale style interactive cutscene in which Funko Pop style alternate versions of the Final Fantasy 15 characters bob their heads at each other while lines cutscene audio from the real game plays. And
so they
this
drag the slider a little bit too low on the graphic setting.
Everyone's anatomy looks painful. Like everyone's arms are too thin for their heads. It looks like their necks are supposed to snap from the weight of their of themselves. And Sid looks weird.
Did you know there was already a Final Fantasy 15 mobile game?
Which one was it?
So there was, I can't remember if it, I don't know if it, I think it released in the West. I don't know, but it's called, what is it called? It's like A New Empire or something, and it's a game, what is it? The Game of War clone? Like, where you micromanage like armies and stuff like that and spend
like
lots
a top-down,
of microtransactions.
Not turn-based, not real-time, but timer-based strategy.
Yeah, where you're building like turrets and armies and units and that kind of thing. Complete like
this
rip-off
looks like more what
Game
you'd
of War.
expect though, because when I read a Final Fantasy 15 mobile version, I didn't know what to expect, but I would have had my expectations more closely met if it was something like a Clash of Clans clone.
But at least this has the genesis of like Final Fantasy and is kind of a Final Fantasy game. So far it looks like that. But if you look at A New Empire, if you look at that game, it's so weirdly jarring to see this game where if you've played 15, it's sort of a game about isolation. Like you're driving through this kind of barren land with your bros, you're hunkering together while there aren't that many people around. And then you see adverts with like A New Empire, and it's like Noctis leading like an army of thousands and thousands of soldiers against giant other armies, and it's really weird.
I feel like being immersed in video games is much harder to do than it used to be.
Why?
I was listening to your podcast last night with Jeremy Blostein, and he said that so much of gaming nowadays is postmodern and weird. And that's my argument here as well. If you're playing Final Fantasy 15 and you see an in-game advertisement for a mobile spin-off of Final Fantasy 15 in which the characters of Final Fantasy 15 are doing things that contradict what they're doing in Final Fantasy 15 for the sake of an extended multimedia marketing campaign that you as a player are just supposed to accept as part of the real world outside the game, that's postmodern and weird. And sitting down with your phone to play a mobile version of Final Fantasy 15 that has like this completely different art style. It's a completely new game, but it's still called Final Fantasy 15 and stylized after Final Fantasy 15. All of the new effort and the new talent that they put into it ends up getting put into a commercial effort to prop up an old product, and that is just so postmodern and weird. And it's like to the point where you can't come into this stuff as a newcomer, it feels like. Like what is the Final Fantasy 15 for mobile versions? Who is the market here? What gamers are locked out of the technology required to play Final Fantasy 15 for real and/or want to relive the experience with this like weird reimagining remake of the story that has completely different gameplay and engine and control scheme and everything? Wah! I'm sorry that went on.
I do understand what you're saying.
I'm watching footage of Noctis like slashing up these scorpions in the desert, and the whole while in the back of my head, I'm wondering like, is this the logical endpoint of video games, where you making one new video game means that you end up making like 4 or 5 other new video games that end up as spin-offs for completely different platforms for completely different markets.
I understand what you're saying, but when you think back to it, even like back to the Super Nintendo, you had like Mario's Missing, you had Mario Golf, you had Mario Tennis.
They were for babies.
And then you had like Kirby games that were spin-offs that had mini games in them. There's always been spin-offs. I understand, you know, you've got like even like Pokemon had like Pokken Tournament, and we've had Pokemon Go. I understand what you're saying, but it almost sounds like you're like, video games aren't pure anymore.
Yeah, because back in those days, those franchises were younger. Pokemon was not a like 25-year-old. Does the voice actor of Pikachu even sound like that anymore?
I don't know, but soon we'll have Detective Pikachu to find out too.
I feel like that element of age adds a lot to my cynicism, because at this point it seems like the franchises are endless. Like everyone accepts that now as a truth. And back in the day, it seems like these installments and these spin-offs were more creative risks.
Make money on that nostalgia.
Yeah. But anyways, I don't know if I'm really bringing us to a healthy place here, dwelling on the mobile spin-off version of Final Fantasy 15 for like a solid 14 minutes. I apologize. I'm George, and those are the 2 things you got to know about me here on the on the Super Bunny Hop Dad and Sons podcast. Have you guys heard about this Microsoft Xbox Game Pass service?
No.
So, did you know that for about $10 a month, you can sign up for a Xbox Game Pass service? It's more or less the Microsoft Xbox version of PlayStation Plus, I believe. Yeah, PlayStation Now is not what I'm thinking of. That's the streaming PS3 games.
EA
PlayStation
Access?
Plus.
This is like EA
It's
Access?
like the EA Access PlayStation Plus. You pay us money per month, and we slowly build you a game collection over the month. They're now actually including their AAA titles in this service, which probably means it's actually a really freaking good deal. Including an Xbox Games Pass from nowadays onwards is going to be Sea of Thieves, Crackdown 3, and State of Decay 2 on launch. However, this means that a huge backlash from some retailers has been triggered since the announcement of these games being included in the programs. There's a couple of Australian retailers who have released statements in opposition of the program. One retailer in particular, named Gameware, has declared it will no longer stock Xbox products as a result. The argument is that if every Xbox sale essentially equips customers with access to a service as increasingly comprehensive as Game Pass, repeat business with those customers is minimal. Why would they head to Gameware when they can subscribe and receive new Xbox releases automatically? Welcome to the 21st century.
They'll be losing money, though. They'll be losing way more money if they don't stock the Xbox products. Why would they do that? I guess they're trying to make a point.
I feel like they're losing money both ways.
Yeah, I think it's more about trying to make a point, isn't it?
Trying to make a point on
because
their
they
way to
will be losing
losing
money if they don't stock Xbox products. They'll just be done. People just walk in. They're like, "Hey, I want Gears of War. Sorry, we don't stock Xbox products because of this. Isn't it? I don't care about that. Normies don't care about that. You better sell them that." Product.
The assumption is that normies usually hadn't cared about these digital marketplaces and online subscription services, but now they gradually do. If you've been in a Best Buy in the past couple of years, it's really depressing how little computer and game stuff there is in those places anymore.
Yeah.
And like retail has had to get really postmodern and weird to like adopt to the 2010s, where retail stores are now like places for events where you go to buy things specifically faster and more convenient than you would on the internet. So they're like priced and packaged accordingly and in a increasingly smaller and more consolidated amount of chains.
For retail, it's changed to more a service, more convenience as well. Like being able to come in and talk to somebody and look at something that you're buying. That's what you're getting from a retail
rewards card. That's how you get the prices to match up with the internet. So, like, doing things to bring us back to Blaustein, man, it's postmodern and weird because it just seems like being a consumer of trash entertainment is so much more complicated than it used to be. Oh, there goes my phone. We have some comments from a UK small brick and mortar mom and pop store called Stan's Games, in which Stan is quoted in this game industry article about Xbox Game Pass saying, "If they're going to do this, I won't bother stocking Xbox. You only make £3 or £4 on Xbox games like the new Monster Hunter if you're lucky. They'll kill the secondhand market. I reckon even the public won't like it in the end. I sold a Monster Hunter this morning and the bloke's already bringing it back." So they're also having to deal with resales on top of giving customers a worse deal than this online service.
Poor Stan.
Yeah, we feel for you, Stan. Trying to keep the dream alive. Trying to keep the dream of an indie video game store alive, and in the UK nowadays has got to be rough.
Oh, God. Oh, God.
There's some cool ones in the States, but they never last long. They always just seem more like the effort of someone wanting to offload their connection than someone wanting to keep the place going for the rest of their life.
Surprisingly, the one I went to since I was a kid in Miami, Multivest, has been there for years and still
nice.
There.
That is very,
this
very lucky.
could kill them.
Xbox Game Pass?
Well, stuff like this can kill them because a lot of people are buying digital downloads now. So, no secondhand market.
I would like to know what the figure is about, Sony and Nintendo and obviously Microsoft. How much they depend on retailers these days compared to even like 3 years ago. Because I don't buy that many physical copies of games anymore, and it doesn't bother me. Whereas when it started out, it bothered me a little bit that I would have like a digital download. It didn't feel like I really owned the game.
Yeah.
If you get what I'm saying, like I didn't have a box. I didn't get like the cool artwork that you get on the box, and I don't get to put it on my shelf and brag to everyone that I bought the new Monster Hunter from Stan.
And now you have boxes filled with old games that you never pick up again, right?
Yeah, or I just trade them in, and like moving to Japan really hit home because, some games in Japan that are too difficult in Japanese, or there are games I really want to play, but they don't have, or the Japanese retail version doesn't have English. I have to get the digital download if I want to play it. So
limited space.
That's true as well.
Isn't it creepy watching this happen? Normalization, like the slow process of something that used to unsettle and disturb people gradually become normal.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird because I think about it 10 and I'd
years,
be like, I used to really like browsing in a video game store, but then I remember the video game store I used to browse in was Game in the UK.
You can still do
and
that
for
in
anyone
Japan.
who's listening who knows about Game are the worst. I'd much rather buy my games online or buy like a physical copy from Amazon or something, then go to Game and be harassed by their staff for like buying shitty accessories I don't need or pre-orders for games that I don't want to play, and pay like an upmarked price because retail is like fading fast.
So I remember when we were in Japan, we saw the soft maps. Mm-hmm. I want to say that there might have been a store that begins with NIK or NK. There was a big electronics chain. I don't remember seeing video game specific
we're talking about
chains.
apples and oranges though, because Japanese video game stores are like the best though.
It's a whole different world too. But I mean,
it's like
I'm
a completely
wondering,
different world.
Is there a Japanese equivalent to a GameStop or a game in the UK?
Yeah, we have quite a few. So we have like the electronic stores. We have like Bic Camera or Yamada Denki.
Yes.
They're like big electronic chains.
Yeah, but they sell multiple genres of consumer goods.
Well, they sell
they're
like
not just games.
They're just like they're electronic stores. They sell washing machines. They sell cameras. They sell
lots of interesting accessories. I believe we found at the top floor of Softmap a bunch of them.
Yeah,
generally
boy.
top floors of game stores you want to stay away from.
The dark side.
Or
then
go
most
to
game stores-
first.
Most game stores are like Gale, which is kind of like a comic and like movie rental place, but focused on video games as well.
So wait, are movie rental places still a thing over there?
Yeah, massively.
Nice. Wow.
Well, is it nice?
'Cause, I love that. I miss game rentals. That's something that hasn't been a thing in the States in like
you can't
15
rent
years.
games, as far as I know.
Red
You can-
Bull.
you can rent.
Well, yeah, I
you
mean,
can rent-
even then,
you
movie
can rent
rentals have gone
movies,
away, and that's
you can
my
rent-
association in my mind. Because yeah, like going to Netflix is an objective improvement, but by losing the movie rental industry, we have lost the game rental industry. And I know I remember that in Japan, game rentals have never been a thing. And with like my Western mindset in my brain, I associated movie rentals with game rentals, and I was like, "You lucky bastard!"
You could get like the Famicom disc kiosks where you would have like a blank Famicom disc, and you could install games at kiosks in electronic stores on the disc. But like, yeah, Japan never really embraced game rentals very much. But you can rent movies, and surprisingly, weirdest of all, you can rent music CDs. You can rent albums, which is super weird. But yeah, video game stores in Japan though, like they're what video game stores in the West were like 20 years ago. Retro games mixed with brand new games, mixed with accessories you actually need, and like figures and guides and all cool sorts of art books. And
I don't know if game
all that
stores
kind of
in the
stuff.
States were ever like that. I remember chains like EB Games being a way bigger deal that would coexist with GameSpot, but they were more or less the same store, like linoleum carpet with that air freshener odor that would sell used copies of the past 4 years of top 40s hits as far back as I can remember, even when they were separate businesses. I remember walking into
Japanese video game
EB
stores are
Games
like you'll go in,
98, and
you'll see Monster Hunter, you'll
like
see
it is
Dragon Ball
today.
Z Fighters, and then next to it you'll have like a basket full of like 2,000 yen PSP visual novels and hentai games just lying on the side as well. That's what Japanese video game stores are like.
On top of not going back further than one generation, you're also not going to find any porn in any stores in the States at all, unless it's specifically... that's like a weird Japan-specific thing, TBH.
Yeah,
I think it's an Asia thing, not really a Japan.
Maybe an Asia thing. I don't know. I can't speak. I've been to the airport in Beijing, and I don't know. That's
Japan
not a good way to judge
Japan
their
knows its
tolerance.
audience. Like, I don't want to get into demographic Japanese society statistics, but statistically, the people who play video games in Japan are the people who watch porn. Like, that's just how it is.
So their stores are set up for one-stop shopping.
Kind of, yeah.
Do you have to show ID when you pick those things up?
I've actually, everyone's going to be calling me a lie, but I've actually never bought porn in Japan, so I wouldn't.
I didn't
actually
have
know.
to show
Oh, I was
my
trying
ID.
to catch you, but it seems like you're a little bit too slick on that, huh? Okay.
There are some areas that have curtains, and they say 18 on them,
Okay.
and you can't. They'll be very open for anyone to walk into them. There's no like security.
I
there's
don't
no,
remember any curtain. It's soft map.
No, there are some that have curtains. Not all.
The porn that I
Some-
found that was one shelf away from Rainbow Six Siege.
Yeah.
Do you have IDs? Because I'm pretty sure you don't have driver's license, because that kind of works both ways here in the States. So you have IDs in Japan?
Well, we have driving licenses.
Really? So why would but no one drives? So what would be the
Everyone
point of
drives.
no one drives
depends,
in Japan.
No one
Everyone
drives
in Japan. Everyone has a car.
No one drives in Tokyo. I drive in Japan. Everyone in my city drives.
Really?
You're thinking of Tokyo, dude. You're just thinking of Tokyo. Trust me.
Really? Okay.
Like central Osaka, even like in cities like Kyoto or like Hiroshima, like everyone drives.
So you have a car.
You're just thinking of like Tokyo. I have a car in Japan. Yeah, I've got a Japanese driving license.
What's your cute little car that you drive around the cute little Japanese countryside?
Yes,
my cute little car
Yeah.
is a Suzuki Wagon R.
Suzuki Wagon.
Google it. Google K.
I'm really hoping.
K car.
Yeah, it's a little like smushed thing.
Yeah. Google K
that's
car
adorable. Oh, so K cars are what those little smushed things are? Yeah.
Yeah, anything with a yellow license plate in Japan is a K car. And K cars mean you get lower tax on your car because they're tiny and they take up less room.
Nice. That's
Everything for convenience. If you're not inconveniencing
smaller,
people,
more
you're better.
You pay less.
Don't mind me. I just want to take up half
better
this
than
parking
everyone
space.
else.
Yes, so I use said ID when needed.
So
Or I use my Gaijin card, you know.
Oh yeah, and
my-
that's also the other thing. Foreigners get the Gaijin card.
Yeah, Zaiden card.
So I guess it's customary for like even urbanite Japanese people in Tokyo to still apply for a driver's license and use that as their primary government ID.
There are lots of forms of ID in Japan. I think Japan's not that strict when it comes to IDing people for stuff. So, I mean, like, I don't know if you've seen Japanese people lately, but they all look pretty young. So they they tend to trust people quite often, and people don't get ID'd very often for things anyway. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. People have like university
student ID
licenses, university cards, and all that kind of stuff, or memberships to clubs.
So
there are lots of forms of ID.
So we're about an hour, 40 minutes in. Let's take some questions and then jetpack out to the horizon. Once again,
Jesus
that
Christ, there's a
question
Metal
line.
Gear question on here.
Oh my God, there is. Once again, that question line is dadandsonspodcast@gmail.com. Dad and Sons is plural. And podcast, one word, no spaces, no capitals, @gmail. Zipper Mimic gives us a good name with
We'll get some water because
interesting,
you guys go
simple
ahead.
Yes or no question. We'll see you later, Matt, because Zipper Mike says they have a question for Liam. Liam,
okay.
have you ever participated in Comicat as a creator?
I've never participated in Comicat. Full stop.
How
so
hard do you think it is to participate as a creator if you're not a Japanese resident? Or I guess we can further unfold the implication there. How hard do you think it would be to participate as a creator at Comicat if you are a foreigner?
I think it'd probably be pretty easy. I have literally no idea really, but I would assume, considering Comicat is like the biggest sort of fan-made indie creator event in Japan, period, I think it would be pretty easy. It's not exactly exclusive who can show stuff. You know, you have people who make doujin of everything. So I would imagine, as long as you could speak some Japanese and you could probably apply through the Comicat website or have like a Japanese friend help you out. I don't know if there is an English form for it or whatever. But I imagine, considering its size and considering how fucking massive Comicat can be, I think it would probably be pretty easy if you put the work in. But as I said, I have no personal experience.
Yeah, and actually I Googled it just now and I found some blogs about it from people who have done it. Let's see.
Go.
I can
Google it.
Skim this real quick, but in the meantime, I'm imagining that challenges include stuff that would come from the size of it, the crowd size, the language barrier coming from the crowd size, and just how like sometimes hard it is pushing your way through a Japanese crowd when they clearly have better reasons to be there than you do.
It's like penguins. It's like penguins huddled together.
Although, as I'm scrolling through, it seems like everything did okay. It looks like this guy set up a booth where he sold some comics.
Like, if you're flying to Japan to do it, like, and you're expecting to make, like, a profit, I wouldn't.
He says, would you do anything differently? Number 4 is no way more Japanese, and way is in all capitals.
Okay, well, there you go. Brush up on your Japanese. Because the people who go to Comic-Con are going to be like the hardcore otaku who want to buy stuff, who, you know, are Japanese people.
Also, the guy says he might fit in better at a different event called Comitia, since that show is focused on original work rather than fan comics. So I guess the other big roadblock might even be like the franchises involved. Like Comic-Cat is supposed to be, it's set up for like independent artists to sell filth, right? But it's all,
well, yeah, it's doujin. It's all doujin stuff. That's like fan works of Japanese brands that I imagine stuff that would appeal to foreigners would get lost in the crowd. Yeah. Potentially, I mean, if you're doing it for the experience and you want to give it a shot, I mean, why not?
Let's see. We got a question about reviews. Might actually want to save that one for if Matt's around. Matt, you around?
I am here.
Hey. Okay. So Matt, you want to talk about reviews?
Let's do it.
Eli B's got a question. I've been kicking around the idea of writing more on video games, and while I'd like to someday write more substantial pieces about bigger picture stuff, like George's critical close-ups or the various Nintendo videos, it's an intimidating prospect. So I figure I'll hone my skills on some smaller review videos before doing so. I plan to work my way through the books you all recommended in episode 6 to expand my vocabulary, but all of that knowledge is useless if I can't properly express it on the page/screen/video. So my question is, what's a good process for putting together a strong review? How much time should I plan to play the game? Is it my responsibility to explore all of the game's content? What sort of note-taking should I practice, etc.? Also, practical stuff like recommending video editing software and how to go about organizing captured footage. Okay.
Let's tackle that first, because George is going to give a horrible answer to that. I've watched this guy record stuff and not timestamp anything, and it drives me insane. Okay, the proper way, if you ever seen my reviews, every time I'm talking about a certain subject, you see it on screen. I'm not lazy, basically. Is what I'm not calling other people lazy, but you see it on screen. The reason how I'm able to do that without driving me insane is that when I'm playing the game, I'm timestamping everything and writing notes. Yeah. Sometimes it stops you while you're watching the game, so you have to be careful. You want to kind of balance that out. You want to make sure you're paying attention to everything that's happening on screen. But that is a good way to kind of organize your thoughts and have like a list of things that you wrote down during the game that can help you when you finish the game, and you can go back and review what you were thinking while you were playing it, and now what you think of the game now, or what it led you to, plus having, of course, things to go back to when you're editing. And to organize the footage, obviously, when you're timestamping, you're naming them, 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever you want to name them. And you can just go back to that certain video while you dropped it into, I use Adobe Premiere because I find that's like the best one to go with, even though they've gotten lazy and hopefully someone else knocks them out of the park, like DaVinci Resolve or anything like that. But Adobe Premiere is pretty much the best one to go with, other than Sony Vegas, which a lot of people still kind of hold on to, that old ass software, but I'm a hater.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I know. You have a friend who uses it. But there's a lot of like plugins and stuff that I like for Premiere, and that's why I use it. And I've gotten used to it after a while. After I made the switch from like a very old school one. So that's my opinion on that subject there.
Yeah, you want to be taking timestamps, and I'm like not that non-diligent. You were like chewing me out for not taking timestamps on like Sonic 06, which we played for like 90 minutes. Okay, so one thing I've noticed is that Matt's setup is way better than me. He has a capture card that's a real capture card that hooks up to a computer. I have a capture card that's a portable box that sits under the TV. When, Matt, you have a way of making timestamps entirely digital on the screen, I have to look away from the screen and write it down in a notebook, and I hate that. I hate having to take my controller... I hate having to put it down and focus my thoughts for a completely different motor skill set. I'm wondering if there's a way that I could like orate my time-stamped thoughts instead of having to write them down. But anyways,
you can pause the game if like my little capture software has like the time going on, and that's when you can use the time there, and that's why. But if not, you could just use a stop clock. But yeah.
I have my cell phone set to a stopwatch with the little box under the TV having a red light on. I pray that it's actually recording, and I will write timestamps, and they'll likely be like 3 to 10 seconds off when I'm actually editing the video, and it's a huge pain, and I hate it, but it's as long as you take diligent enough notes, it's not that bad to sort through the footage afterwards. But for video essays that aren't reviews, and you're still going to be doing this in reviews, though. If you have any clips sliding around, give them file names based on when they show up in the video. I have all of my clips file named in numerical order based on when they slide around the screen. So getting out on the internet and gathering all the clips is oftentimes like the most methodical drudgery part of the process. But once you rename them, it's like a matter of sliding things into the timeline in order and snipping them into the right size, and everything else happens kind of just out of muscle memory at this point. But let's see, like, what about writing? What writing advice can we give? I've talked about the Toolman method before, and
it depends what kind of reviews you're writing. Like, you have long form stuff that you have time to digest, like stuff that you don't have a deadline for. If you're writing a review like someone who works for IGN or GameSpot or an outlet that has a deadline, it's completely different. I have previous experience with writing for deadlines, and that kind of stuff is difficult, and there's definitely different rules that apply to both. And long form stuff review is more like what George does, where you sort of have time to digest stuff a little better.
Since you don't have any bosses telling you otherwise, and since you don't have a financial incentive to make a normal review, don't make a normal-ass review. No one's going to watch a normal-ass review when they could go to IGN for a normal-ass review, right? If you're trying to market your own personality-driven content yourself of your own business on your own YouTube channel, it's going to have your own style to it. Mm-hmm. And that actually is pretty advantageous for us, since it means we don't have to race against the clock for timeliness and make a normal review. I've been guilty of making normal reviews, but I enjoy thinking of reviews as an outlet for the reviewer's own writing style rather than an actual exploration of the product at hand. I love it when reviews reveal a truth about the world that is greater than a truth about the product they are reviewing themselves. When I was growing up, I read a lot of creative, like, comedy reviews on something awful, and there were like more introspective medium-wide reviews that would look at how well the movie works as a piece of traditional cinematic movie making on like the Red Letter Media Plinkett review series. And then there's stuff like Slavoj Žižek's Pervert's Guide to Cinema, which is a series of reviews of landmark movies like The Shining and Psycho to explore completely unrelated social issues. Like, those are reviews that you, as an independent, are in a much better position to be making than regular-ass normal reviews. In that respect, I recommend the Toolman outline.
I am not so fancy. I am terrible at writing. Well, I guess, I'm okay, I guess. I usually write how I speak usually, and I think for me, it's about finding what you like to. Don't try to be someone else. I would say, unless you're really good at that, unless you're really good at writing, you could just write like somebody else and act like that when you get on the mic. I would say do it true to you and see how that turns out.
Yeah, just make sure you're showing your best face. You do want your own style, but you don't want to take it casually.
Yeah.
Like one thing that I feel not enough YouTubers do is like think of it as a resume project. Like nowadays, it's especially evident that the YouTube as a profession is not going to last forever. So when you do officially publish your stuff, make sure it looks like hireable. It looks like a portfolio piece. That's the philosophy I've always taken with Bunny Hop, and it's worked out well for me, is taking the time for every video, because I wanted a job in game journalism, didn't have one, and that was my application, was the Bunny Hop channel.
Having versatility in your writing is super important. Like, being able to write about video games is good, and being able to structure reviews and, explain your point and reasoning for whatever your point is about a video game is great. But you need to have some versatility and, take some inspiration from what George does, where, he'll review like Zelda, or he'll review Night in the Woods in a video game, but he'll also write a piece about pachinko machines or Konami, and having that versatility is really important. So
and it
you need
doesn't
to
even
sort of be able
have
to write
be
different styles.
It doesn't even have to be explicit. Like when I was doing the Night in the Woods review, like I was having a lot of thoughts swimming through my head of like an old friend I grew up with whose memories struck me as I was going through the game's story, and I was channeling a lot of that kind of nostalgia in what turned out to be something that was close to a normal video game review. But I remember that my message at the end of that review, my like conclusion behind recommending it, was based on how much patience you would have for someone in real life who resembles the characters in this game. And that's an angle I don't think a lot of other writers were going at, because I was thinking of a personal experience that I was relating it to. And yeah, people like that stuff. If I had made a completely normal review that gave a yes or no quality judgment of the game 2 weeks after it came out, people would be disregarding my stuff if it didn't have that personal touch to it, I think.
And let me bring it down to a lower level here. All right. Expanding your vocabulary and everything. Like, I know lately all the channels that have grown, they all sound smart. They're all using these big words and all this stuff. You don't need any of that. Yeah, sure. Expand your vocabulary. That's always good. I'm doing mine as well because my vocabulary is garbage. But don't be like, okay, I have to sound like this guy. I have to sound like Toolkit. I have to sound like George. I have to sound like, just do your thing. Don't worry about sounding smart. All right.
Also, in writing school, they actually recommend you use easier words.
Yeah.
Like this is a recurring rule in journalism, is like edit for redundancy and word choice. Make sure you have the easiest word choice possible. Newspapers are supposed to be written at a 8th grade level, and I don't know if I write an 8th grade level, but I try to make sure that my words don't come off as pretentious, but I try to make sure that like the point sounds more complicated and poignant and beautiful than the actual words I'm choosing to make that point. That's the dynamic I try to hit with regards to flowery word choices.
There you go.
Yeah. Play through games, take notes on them for a while, get good at writing by practicing writing.
Yeah.
And
yeah, do it.
That's like 1/3 of the way there. Then you got to edit and voice and stuff, and we can go on forever, but I feel like we've covered some good basics on how to start by getting your inspirations swirling and your style developing.
Yeah, get in now.
Moving on to the next question. Mark L says, since I know you guys love talking about Metal Gear,
God.
I wanted to know what your opinion is on Twin Snakes for GameCube. It was my first experience with the series. I was a Sega guy who grew up with a Saturn, never had a PS1, and the GameCube was my first current console, and I've always considered it my favorite game of all time, never mind of the MGS series. However, I get that it's a highly controversial opinion. Have any of you played it, and if so, what do you think of it? Would you say it compares with the rest of the series, or am I completely under the serial experience effect?
Never played it.
I have very little experience with Twin Snakes. I just briefly played it on GameCube with a friend back in the day. But I did find out, speaking to Jeremy Blaustein this week, the original translator for Metal Gear Solid, is that Twin Snakes, there's sort of the personality and lines you fondly remember from Metal Gear Solid were changed in Twin Snakes, and that's because Kojima didn't really like the quirky changes to his scripts. So when he had full control with the Twin Snakes version, he kind of took a lot of it out.
I'm wondering if I can find a dump of the Twin Snakes script somewhere on the internet, because I know a few lines that I could control F for just to check that were Blaustein originals. I don't know if I mentioned it on the podcast before, but do you guys remember when Sniper Wolf says something about shooting a love letter from... Here we go. Love letter. Well, I'm going to send you a love letter, my dear. You know what that is? It's a bullet straight from my gun to your heart. I know my impersonation is immaculate, but that line was stolen from Blue Velvet. It was not in the original Japanese version script. It was very much Blaustein just on his own in a room by himself, as he put it. And I'm wondering if that made it through. There was so much
that Jeremy did
to Twin Snakes
to take liberties with what was being written by Kojima and add his own creative spin on it. And a lot of people don't realize that the Metal Gear Solid version we all played is quite a bit different from the Japanese one. And if you enjoyed it and the funny lines like, do you believe love can bloom on a battlefield? That's Jeremy. That's not Kojima, that's Jeremy. And he was the only person who worked on the translation for Metal Gear Solid. There wasn't really a localization team at Konami back then. So he did this all by himself, one guy. Speaking of another person who did a whole project by themselves, he was this sole translator. And he also told me how Snake got his voice. On the first day of recording, David Hayter...
How was that?
Well, David Hayter supposedly didn't know how to... Didn't know what to do, really. So Jeremy asked him just to do his best impression of Clint Eastwood.
What?
Good job, David.
So when you hear Snake,
nailed it.
You're hearing David Hayter's impression of Clint Eastwood.
What?
And this whole time I thought it was his impersonation of Snake from Escape from New York.
Escape from New York.
Yeah, like when you
No,
watch...
it's Clint Eastwood, supposedly.
Wow. So I admit I did listen to the podcast, but I got about an hour in, and I don't know if I got that far to the Clint Eastwood story. What other details can you share? What other interesting anecdotes? Because I remember the bit about Kojima supposedly taking Blaustein lines out of the script for the Twin Snakes, which sounds like such a slap in the face.
Yeah,
and,
so...
also how, like, he suspects that one of the reasons he had so much more creative freedom than the future translators was that the internet infrastructure to supervise these translators hadn't really developed at the time. Like he didn't even have Skype. He was really given Microsoft Word, the Japanese script, and a helpline to Kojima, and put in a room by himself.
Not even that. He didn't even really work in tandem with Kojima at all.
He had a couple meetings. He had a lot. He had more contact with Kojima than the future translators, which is a important dynamic to the process that I feel hurt the other Metal Gear games over MGS1.
As explained in Jeremy's own words, Metal Gear was kind of like in English. Metal Gear Solid in English was a afterthought to Konami and Kojima himself. Like, it was like, we're just going to release it in the West. We'll make a few $100,000 on it or whatever. We don't expect it to sell. Like, you know, the Metal Gear franchise itself, like on the MSX and stuff, didn't do that well. So they were just like, this will be like a Japanese thing. And they were too busy with the Japanese version because it had all this brand new voice acting and stuff. They couldn't have given a shit about like the English translation at all. And so that's why they gave it to one guy. And then they, you know, weren't bothered about supervising him. One, because it was expensive. He was a freelancer at the time, so he wasn't actually working in Japan with them. He was just a former Konami employee. So they just let him do it. And that's why he, you know, took some liberties with it and created the Metal Gear Solid script we all sort of know and
I wonder if the opinion on the importance of the Western version of Metal Gear Solid 1 had changed over time, because I remember, like, I think my impression of that attitude is really different. It's from a 2007 interview with Blaustein, where he said that Kojima actually did care about how the game was going to be received in the West, and that's why he did work closer.
I think
with
Kojima might have cared, because Kojima has always wanted to be an auteur.
Also, this interview was from 11 years ago, so the opinion on how much they cared back then could have changed over time too.
Yeah, I think he probably was being a little more coy if he was still working in some capacity as a freelancer with Konami.
Back then, the stakes would have been higher too.
But back then, you got to remember, Kojima wasn't the big shot he is now. So whatever Kojima wanted probably wouldn't have passed through Konami higher-ups anyway. They probably weren't willing to spend the money to put him directly in contact with Blaustein constantly.
Yes.
So...
And the other thing
Konami would have been like, no, you just let this dude get on with it and you focus on the Japanese one.
The other thing that Blaustein said was that they really had no idea what they were doing, which I bet is way closer to the truth than them like not caring about about the Western version. It's more like they had no idea how the localization process was going to work compared to their efforts for the sequels that got way more standardized.
There are parts of that. There are elements of both. You know, there was no such thing really as localization. The localization departments, I should say, or translating as a profession kind of thing. But also at the same time,
voice
as
acting
evident by a
new.
lot of video games from the 90s and the 80s, English localization was really bad. Like, they couldn't give a fuck about the Western audience for a lot of the time for smaller games.
Even bigger ones, like Sonic Adventure, which came out after Metal Gear. And I think that's the thing, is that from what I had heard on your podcast, the like new impression I'd gathered is that from that late 90s, turn of the millennium area, where voice acting was brand new and cinematic experiences were brand new, there were a lot of mistakes, and Metal Gear Solid was the one happy accident where they had like gotten a bunch of confused foreigners to speak English and a weird, quirky Japanese, made for Japanese gamers script, but it was like given to a guy who turned it into something good with these actors who they were like confused about how they were supposed to pay and credit them because they didn't know how the Actors Guild rules worked. And so that's how, isn't that like how they got David Hayter on in the first place? Was they kind of smuggled him in? They said he was the only one who would use his real name in the acting credits. Yeah, they weren't like part of a union or something at the time, or their union wouldn't allow them to do stuff. I can't remember what it was Jeremy explained to me. Yeah. It was something like that. There's a reason that David Hayter was the only one who used his real name. That time, you have successful Japanese cinematic experience games like Metal Gear Solid just completely kill it, while most Japanese cinematic games that get translated over completely stumble and fail, even when they're outwardly marketed to the Western audience. I'm thinking Resident Evil specifically. Like, that's another case where they hired a bunch of foreigners who could speak English to act in English for a game with a more explicitly worldwide appeal, and they just completely fell on their face when trying to put it together because it was from a time where no one knew. There's definitely elements of that. Yeah, it's I think that if you were to document the production of Metal Gear Solid 1, it would actually be a lot more unintentionally hilarious than you'd expect. Anyways, one last question. Sorry.
It was. I will admit, it was super nice talking to him. He's a really nice guy, and I sort of fanboyed out a little bit. We were talking on Skype, and he showed me the original Metal Gear Solid script. He still has it on his desk
in Japanese.
The original
or English?
Japanese script he was given.
Oh wow! Does it have handwritten notes
it was in
by
a
Kojima
blue
on it?
binder that had the Metal Gear Solid logo down the side of it. It was.
I've heard about these notes he scribbles into the margins with all the movie references.
Yes.
Did you see those? Did you lay eyes on the scribbled
No,
movie
he just
references?
briefly showed it to me, saying that he still had it on his desk and
Wow.
and stuff like that, and it was very cool.
Okay, one last question, then we got to wrap. AntV says, question, what is the absolutely weirdest thing you would like to see in gaming? Should I start us off?
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay, right now I'm really hung up on the idea of a musical Final Fantasy game that is just a musical the whole way
It's
through.
already been made.
Tell me its name again.
Theater Rhythm.
Theater
Is it a phone game? Is it a mobile game?
No, it's a 3DS game.
Oh, okay.
and it's a phone game too, I think.
Yeah.
So
It's I think it was a phone game originally, but then they made a 3DS remake of it. That's really good.
I had read. Oh my god, it's a Final Fantasy game. Okay.
There's a Dragon Quest one too, I think.
Need to
Maybe?
clarify that I have been listening to that Distant Worlds album of Final Fantasy orchestral concert covers that is super good, and I've been
Very good.
I recently read an interview quote that apparently at some point during development FF15 was a musical, and I see Theater Rhythm. It's a rhythm game. What I'm saying is a Final Fantasy 40-hour long mainline sequel just as a big gratuitous musical, a really expensive like theater style musical where there are just no qualms about how stupidly gratuitous of a production Final Fantasy usually is, and they fully embrace the operatic overtones and make the first video game rock opera. For some reason I'm really hung up on this idea lately.
Final Fantasy VI is kind of like that. Anyway.
Yes, imagine Final Fantasy VI Opera House, the whole game.
But even the bits with the
Fucking
boss
do it.
fights with Kefka and having Dancing Mad playing in the background, it definitely feels like a theater.
It would be a nightmare to localize and design and make. It would be weird as hell, but it just seems like an ultimate expression of what that brand has become all about. And anyways, that's my answer. That's the weirdest thing I'm hung up on right now. It'll probably change over the weeks though.
I'm trying to think. I want this trend of minis, the NES Mini and the Super Nintendo Mini. I want that to catch on. Mm-hmm. So I want a PlayStation 1 Mini, and I want a PlayStation 2 Mini that has
a PS1 Mini
20
would be
to
good
30
ass fun.
20 to 30 good, solid, genre-defining games. If you had the PlayStation 2 one, you could have Gran Turismo, you could have Dragon Quest 8, you could have Final Fantasy 10. I want mini versions of every console that existed. So I don't have to collect retro games and take up space. I can just have these mini little consoles that specifically play the best games.
What would be even better is oh god. is if they put digital versions of those consoles on even smaller little things like a thumb drive or something, let's say. Ooh. that utilized an open system API to interface with a number of controllers with let's say some customizable options, maybe buttons to speed through the text prompts in Earthbound when you're grinding your way through maybe save states where you could
yes.
Yeah, play around with the games. That would be.
I mean,
neat,
you
too.
can do that, but I like the minis. I like them.
You're a consumer. You're a victim of the system. Anyways, Matt, what's
plastic?
I like it.
I don't know. I feel like this is a cop out, but it's the only thing that comes to mind is being jacked into the Matrix. You know, getting
Yeah,
VR to the
Ready
point
Player
where
One begins now.
Yeah, getting VR to the point where, you know, you feel like you in there, you know?
Right, where you put your feet in the stirrups and strap in.
Yeah, you know, where you, like, you're all up in your brain somehow without, you know, sticking a big metal piece into there.
Oh, like Quest World. Where it's like a real where future video games are like lucid dreams almost.
Yeah. I don't know. I want to see some Sword Art. Oh, that's bad description. Sword Art Online type stuff, or some Ready Player One type stuff. You know.
But aren't those dystopias?
Not much. Ready Player. Not Sword Art Online. Sword Art Online, you just put on a visor and I guess through like. I can't remember, but I think through like things flashing in your eye, like you go. I can't remember. I think it's something you do stab into you, but I can't remember. It's been so long since I've watched that, and I kind of gave up on it.
It's a very well respected series.
Yeah, it
a lot of
goes
positive
off.
reviews on YouTube.
Yeah, the first season. Yeah, it's kind of okay, and then after that,
it just goes downhill. It's like, what?
Whoa.
You're my sister. What's going on here?
Oh no, Japan is happening.
Oh no.
That one was for you, Doogly Jim. That little bit.
All right.
This week's anime section brought to you by Doogly Jim.
So that was
You're not lonely.
That was this week's podcast section. You're not lonely with us. You got good dads who care about you, and you also got sons
too.
Which one are they though? I don't know, but you do. Because you decide.
You keep going on with this, Harmon.
I know.
You decide.
And I really have to go to the bathroom again.
I
gotta run away. Okay.
I've recently seen most of the comments point to Matt being the dad. Which I think is really surprising.
What?
Okay. So yeah,
I have not read any of the comments because I know better. Me being the dad.
Yeah. Oh my god, everyone fucking hated me last week. Woo. But then again, if Matt